is a soul-stirring Ved mantra in the Yajurved. Om yen deu rugra prithvi cha dridha yen swastabhitam yen nakah yo antarikshe rajaso vimanah kasmai devaya havisha vidhem. This Ved mantra talks about that supreme being that helps you travel through space. लोक लोकांतरों में विचरण करना और कराना उस ईश्वर की, परम पिता परमेश्वर की विशेष भक्ति किया करें. Now, is that actually possible? Of course, traveling in space is already happening. India's Group Captain Subhanshu Shukla is part of that mission in space, the first Indian in the International Space Station. This is happening almost 4 decades after squadron leader Rakesh Sharma. He was a cosmonaut. Now we have an astronaut. But what is India's big space plan? To talk more about it, and India does intend to take huge leaps, is already taking those huge leaps, is Dr. Jitendra Singh, Minister of State, Independent Charge, Science and Technology, Earth Sciences, Prime Minister's Office and Ministry of Personnel. Sir, welcome on Chakraview podcast.
Thank you, Gaurav.
Sir, you wear multiple hats. You're a medical doctor. You look at space science very closely. You're a member of parliament from Jammu and Kashmir. But if we were to talk about India's space plans first, tell us about the broad overview, especially Group Captain Subhanshu Shukla's mission. What do we hope to achieve through this?
Yeah, of course. And before that, just picking up from the shloka that you so beautifully recited to begin with, about the Earth being the voyage, exploring the Earth. And this is precisely what Subhanshu said, that Earth looks just one. You can't demarcate boundaries, which is very much in keeping with Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam also. So I think that there also India has spiritually proved a point. So that connects with your initial recitation. But having said that, as far as the space plans are concerned, of course, India, of course, has is moving on its space plans at all those levels which other nations which had launched themselves before us, like for example, notably US and the then USSR, and also to some extent European Space Agency. But besides that, I think India has also qualified in making initiatives or undertaking initiatives which were not so commonly undertaken by the other nations which started off before us. Like, for example, in the infrastructure development, the sectoral development. Today, most of, at least in the last 11 years after Prime Minister Modi took over, almost all the infrastructure, the flagship programs, the government of India have a very, very important and a heavy space technology component. Look, for example, look at the smart city program. It was started by Prime Minister Modi. The railway crossings, unmanned crossings, then, of course, disaster forecast. Now we are even offering our help and our inputs, at least to all the neighboring countries. In fact, way back in 2015 or 16, we launched a satellite, which was, some people fancifully thought it could be named as SARC satellite, but then somehow Pakistan did not offer to become a part of it. Of course, it is to their disadvantage. But we are offering now inputs to all the other neighboring countries. Besides that, huge forays into the telemedicine, communication, of course, what we are talking today. And also in some of our governance programs, interesting, like Swamitva program, undertaken by the government of India very successfully. He's become almost a global success story where using space technology, using drones, you can map the farms, you can map the land. You put the revenue officer in the Patwari out of job. You made the citizen master of his destiny. So I think India is now doing all that anybody else could be doing, rather in a better way. And we have also proved that we are no longer followers. In more ways than one, we are also, in fact, motivating or beckoning others to follow. Like, for example, America landed on the surface of moon way back 1969, Neil Armstrong. And 1969 is the year when officially ISRO was established. We were just being born. But today, we are the first to land on the southern pole of moon. So Likewise, in more ways than one. Now, for example, even Subhashu, we were talking about the various experiments, at least 6 or 7 of them, are the ones which are being conducted for the first time. No astronaut from any region, from any country has ever done so. And what he is doing is going to offer inputs to the rest of the world as well.
So, for example, because I was reading, there is an MOU that your ministry has signed, whether plants can be grown in space. Tell us more about these experiments or these, plans that you have.
No, exactly. That's a very interesting story, because when I suggested to this chairman ISRO, the then chairman ISRO, that we would have, and then also took the secretary, Department of Biotechnology, into conference. Many others were wondering why I was, harping on this idea. Then I told them, look here, one day we may be having a specialty called space biology, and even the medical domain where I belong to could be having a separate specialty of space physicians. And then I told them from my own experience that, look here, about 20, 30 years back, we had newly come across a new emerging specialty called sports medicine. Nobody thought much about it.
True.
जिसकी डॉक्टरी नहीं चलती थी वहाँ जाता था. I mean, it was not taken very seriously. But today, sports medicine, sports physicians are among the highest paid.
वही मैं बोलने वाला था कि सबसे ज़्यादा पैसा उसी में
So
है.
I said, tomorrow you may have space physicians who might be asked even to accompany these voyages and expeditions in the space. Now, all that Subhashu is doing, it could have been done in a better way. There are some very important life sciences experiments being done for him. Myogenesis, comparing to the muscles, how the muscles become dysfunctional or tend to get wasted in the microgravity, and how to strategize their recovery. So that is one. The other is the human impact of the use of continuous use of electronic gadgets, looking at the screen and how with what frequency do you need to give rest to your faculties and eyes, so to avoid any adverse cognitive effects. Now, this could have been done in a better way by a biotechnologist or a physician, but they are not trained to be there in micros. So now astronaut was trained as a doctor or as a researcher to do that, and he's done it beautifully. I mean, he's picked up so well.
I mean, a fighter pilot, a scientist is also now being trained as a doctor to carry out these experiments in
But tomorrow
space.
we might have space physicians also trained to acclimatize themselves to the microgravity and accompany the crew there.
Correct. Amazing. What are India's big plans? Because we hear a lot about Bharatiya Antariksh Station. We hear a lot about Gaganyaan. We hear about Chandrayaan 4. So let's take it step by step. India's manned mission or a human mission to space. उसकी क्या रूपरेखा है, कब तक होगा और delays क्यों हो रहे हैं?
हाँ, you're right. Delays हुए. As of now, the schedule is 2026. Maybe the first quarter of it. And delay, of course, we had very ambitiously planned it to time it with the 75th year of independence. Then, unfortunately, COVID happened. That was an important, but no good. And at that point in time, when the lockdown happened, our astronauts, the potential astronauts, were undergoing training in Moscow, in one of the institutes, and they had to be called back. So the whole thing got derailed. So then there was a gap of 1 or 2 years. Again, the training had to be started again. Then there was the Indian component of the training. So it took time. Meanwhile, of course, this offer to accompany to the International Space Station happened. And since we already had 4 of them already undergoing training, virtually almost completed their training and also going through the quarantine, Group Captain Nair, Krishna, Angad, and Shubhanshu, of course, was a squadron leader at that time. Now he's also a group captain. So the choice had to be one of them. So this selection of Shubhanshu was also from among those 4 who were actually trained for Gaganyaan. So it got delayed. Then now, of course, we are into the test flights for Gaganyaan, because there are different modules, the crew module, the lab module, and getting it back safe is equally important. Absolutely. So it's going to be a whole of science and a whole of government, because the naval guards are going to be involved in that when they
retrieve them
back in the waters. And therefore, I think maybe by the end of this year, if all goes as we have planned, we'll have the final test flight, which would be actually carrying a robo-astronaut. And she will be a female robo who's been named Vyomitra. And after that, when everything happens as per the envisaged plan and we are satisfied on all accounts and even the safety and the security part, then maybe by the beginning of next year we'll have the first human being in space, Indian human being in an indigenous flight, of course.
In an indigenous flight. Sir, ये व्योम मित्र एक महिला क्यों, this is something that I wanted to understand, and while you've spoken about it, since we're doing a detailed conversation, I'd like to understand the government's thought process on Vyom Mitra before I come back to Gaganyaan and India's international or Indian space station.
No, I think if you take a holistic view and you just try to assess the tone and tenor of this government of the last 1 decade, ever since Prime Minister Modi took over, there has been absolute democratization of opportunities, democratization of the tasks allocated. For example, he was the first one who introduced girl students to Sainik schools, also had female-led parades, etc., etc. And I think keeping the same spirit alive is like that. And we have some, and yes, as far as the space sector is concerned, I think we already have several women leaders. And many of our projects are actually women-led. Like, for example, our very ambitious solar project was Aditya project.
Aditya L1.
Aditya L1, led by a woman, Nizar. She's a Tamilian. And so also Chandrayaan 3, which was a great success. Number 2 was Kalpana. So again, a woman. And so also in many of our other projects. So I think there's absolute equivalent distribution of tasks and equivalent performance as well.
Sir, one of the aspects that the world is looking at very closely, and you hinted about that initially, is deep sea exploration. And when it comes to India, given our huge coastline and our exclusive economic zone and others who are trying to come into our waters, what are we doing there? The role of space, the role of science, and you wear multiple hats. How do we harness that wealth? जो एक ज़माने में कहते थे भारत सोने की चिड़िया है, हम असल में सोने की चिड़िया है.
बिल्कुल. I am so glad, Gaurav, आपने ये विषय उठाया, because this is something not talked about often. And that is why Prime Minister Modi spoke about it twice consecutively in his 2 Independence Day addresses, 2022, maybe 2023, maybe, because he was trying to awaken the Indian mind to this vast wealth which is lying unexplored. So, in fact, there was a group of youngsters from Australia last year. So in a lighter vein, I told them, I said, your island called Australia, your country called Australia, your continent called Australia, but your ocean not called Australia.
Yeah.
My ocean called Indian Ocean.
Yeah.
And then I tried to give them a philosophical, explanation. मैंने कहा मेरे पूर्वजों ने भापा होगा कि इसके अंदर इतनी संपत्ति छिपी है, तो इसलिए नाम रख दिया हिंद महासागर के, कल जा करके कोई भापेगा क्या है.
हाँ, कि ये हमारा है.
कैसे पुराने ज़माने में होता था, जब there was no banking system in place, तो वो गड्ढा गाड़ करके किसी पेड़ के नीचे रहा देते थे सोना, ताकि जब आप उसकी छाँव में 3-4 पीढ़ी के बाद संतान बैठे तो उनको ख्याल आया कि ये यहाँ क्या रखा है, तो खोद के निकाल ले. तो मैंने कहा शायद हमारे पूर्वजों ने भी हमारे लिए हिंट ड्रॉप करने के लिए रखा था नाम, लेकिन विडंबना ये कि उसका एहसास हमें अब होने लगा. टिल 2014-15 there was no attention given to this vast resource, as you rightly pointed out. 11,000 किलोमीटर लंबा हमारा coastal area. और
11,000 किलोमीटर.
And if you explore, and almost 12 states lying on the coast, अगर आप उसको एक्सप्लोर करेंगे, I think the amount of minerals, metals and fishery जो वहाँ से निकलेगी would be almost as much as you are getting on the land.
एक चीज़ मैं आपसे और समझना चाहता हूँ, and again, since this is so fascinating, and there are India's adversaries who want to come into this area, and they know what we have here. How does that knowledge get spread widely that we have to spend a lot of resources in protecting our assets in the ocean, that we need a more powerful navy, we need more in exploration? There's a map in the Navy Chief's office, which I'm very fascinated by, which shows India as the center of the world. मतलब हम मध्य में हैं और पूरा दुनिया हमारे आसपास है. एक और दूसरा, if you look at India's map, sir, south is, the tip, ये हमारा माथा है, और बाकी फिर पीछे. हम लोग का बहुत हिमालय ओरिएंटेड अप्रोच है. हमारा ओशन ओरिएंटेशन अब और करने की आवश्यकता है. हमारी शक्ति वहीं है.
ये आप ठीक कह रहे हैं। एक तो हमने ये जो समुद्र का सरमाया है इसे ना तराशा ना तलाशा, कभी नहीं देखा। वी आई मीन टिल दिस गवर्नमेंट केम आई वंडर व्हाई नो टेंशन। और इनफैक्ट हिमालय को भी हमने पूरा नहीं देखा। हिमालय का रिसोर्स भी अभी शुरू हुआ एक्सप्लोर होने। वी हैव सो मेनी states and union territories lying in the lap of Himalaya. अब ये जो लेवेंडर का we have now almost within 3-4 years we have 3,000 startups engaged in lavender cultivation. It's become a lucrative source of livelihood.
और पैसा उसमें कितना
इतना
है?
पैसा है कि कॉर्पोरेट्स की दुनिया से बीटेक और एमबीए किए हुए बच्चे छोड़ करके यहाँ आ गए।
सही बात है। तो
मैंने एक को पूछा, मैं कभी तो बेंगलोर में वहाँ थे, तो बोले साहब 12-14 घंटे कंपनी का काम करते थे और यहाँ ये आराम से घर में बैठ करके मैंने देखा मेरा दोस्त इतने ज़्यादा कमा रहा है, तो मैंने कहा मुझे क्या करना है सर।
सही बात है।
सो एक्चुअली ये इस तरफ ओरिएंटेशन भी इसी सरकार ने दी।
हाँ।
तो देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ अपॉर्चुनिटीज आल्सो फॉर लाइवलीहुड इन हिमालयाज भी और हमारे ओशन। इस तरफ देखा ही नहीं हमने।
हाँ।
स्पेस तो चलिए एक थोड़ा सा सोफिस्टिकेटेड सेक्टर था, लेकिन जो बिल्कुल अवेलेबल थे
सही बात
एट आवर बैकयार्ड उस तरफ भी हमने नहीं देखा।
और जबकि हम वी आर अ सी फेयरिंग नेशन।
यस,
मतलब भारत, चोला साम्राज्य देख लीजिए, छत्रपति शिवाजी का साम्राज्य देख लीजिए, हम तो लगातार सी फेयरिंग नेशन।
और ये हमारा एक्सक्लूसिव डोमेन है और किसी के पास है भी नहीं।
हाँ।
ना ये हिमालय किसी के पास है इतना लंबा चौड़ा, ना किसी के पास समुद्र है इतना।
सर अगेन आई नो आई एम डाइग्रेसिंग अ लिटिल, लेकिन इस समय जिस तरह की बातें चल रही हैं, प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी अभी 5 दिनों की यात्रा पर गए। इट वाज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट विजिट, नॉट जस्ट द ब्रिक्स समिट बट आल्सो द
And I
अदर
think he's made
कंट्रीज।
a record in getting head of state
26 I
honors,
believe,
yes.
but it's being mocked at by some political leaders within our country. You heard what Punjab Chief Minister Bhagwant Mann said, ki unable to pronounce even the names of the countries he visited. What do you make of that,
I think
sir?
that we would have to come out of that mindset and understand that Prime Minister is Prime Minister of every Indian. He's not Prime Minister of BJP alone, so as to make some other political party find a fault with it. So when you tend to look through that narrow prism, then these kind of thoughts happen. If you grow above this, then you will take pride in this. So if you look at Gandhi, you don't say Gandhi of Congress. In the BJP holds him with equal reverence. So I think we need to evolve. As I said, we are still an evolving nation.
तो मतलब पंजाब के मुख्यमंत्री अगर ये कहते हैं कि जहाँ जहाँ वो जा रहे हैं उन देशों का वो नाम तक सही ढंग से नहीं लेते।
नाम सही ढंग नहीं लेते तो जो नाम नहीं ले पा रहा है ये तो उसका दोष है ना, कि उनसे नहीं लिया जा रहा। इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि वो देश बुरे हैं।
या जो कुछ लोग ये कह रहे थे कि प्रधानमंत्री की ये यात्रा सबसे महत्वपूर्ण विदेश यात्राओं में से एक थी, जिस तरह से चाइना की डेट ट्रैप डिप्लोमेसी को वो काउंटर कर रहे हैं भारत के इकोनॉमिक मॉडल से। भारत जिस तरह आपने वसुधैव कुटुंबकम का जिक्र किया, दैट विल हेल्प ऑल कंट्रीज एंड दे देन आर क्लोजर टू अस, ग्लोबल साउथ स्पेशली। क्या ये लैक ऑफ अंडरस्टैंडिंग है या पॉलिटिकल मॉकिंग, डेमोक्रेसी चलता है?
पॉलिटिकल मॉकिंग तो है ही है, बट लेट अस ऑल एक्सेप्ट इन ऑल ह्यूमिलिटी, regardless of what the political affiliation may be, regardless of even what the ideology may be, even for those who do not subscribe to the ideology of the ruling party of the day, will they not confess that the biggest brand ambassador that India today has is Prime Minister Modi? आपके कितने काम सरल हो जाते हैं अगर मोदी जी का चेहरा सामने आ जाता है या उनका एक वक्तव्य निकल जाता है। जैसे मैंने अभी कहा कि स्वतंत्रता दिवस के अवसर पर एक मर्तबा नहीं 2 मर्तबा उन्होंने डीप ओशन मिशन का बोला, और हमने जगह जगह जाके कहा कि साहब ये जानते हैं क्यों कहा? क्योंकि हमें समझ आए कि हमारे सागर की गहराई में कितनी संपत्ति छिपी है। एंड वी नो हिज वर्ड कैरीज ग्रेटर ट्रस्टवर्दीनेस, ग्रेटर क्रेडिबिलिटी, ग्रेटर रीच। तो ये तो हमारे लिए एसेट है ना। और यही कारण है कि जब when you have to project something about India, I think the easiest methodology available to us is to operate through Prime Minister Modi.
तो आप भगवंत मान के बयान को किस रूप में देखते हैं?
मुझे लगता है it has been said from a very narrow prism of view, but a common citizen of India would not subscribe to that.
जिस तरह से इस समय राजनीति हो रही है, बिहार में वोटर कार्ड रिवीजन जो हो रहा है, विपक्ष कह रहा है कि ये एक प्रयास है कि आप वोट ही काट दें एक तबके का, नरेंद्र मोदी सरकार के मंत्री के रूप में आप इसे किस रूप में देखते हैं?
नहीं, पहली बात तो ये, कल जब मुझे लगता है कि जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कुछ कह दिया तो उसके बाद कहने की आवश्यकता नहीं, ना औचित्य है। इलेक्शन कमीशन इज़ एन इंडिपेंडेंट बॉडी। जो ये लोग कहते हैं उनका माइंड कंडीशन हुआ हो कांग्रेस के 50 साल के राज से, when they would be interfering in the working of the independent body, चाहे CBI हो चाहे इलेक्शन कमीशन। They are taking time to understand that this is a government led by Prime Minister Modi which does not interfere in the working of the independent constitutional bodies. अब वो समझते हैं कि जैसे हम करते रहे 40-50 साल, उन्हीं के दौरान CBI को कहा गया था पैरेट इन केज, हमारी सरकार के दौरान नहीं कहा गया। और वो समझते हैं कि जिस तरह से हम हथकंडे अपनाते थे यही अपना रहे होंगे, उनको समझ नहीं आया। और इसीलिए तो कहते हैं बीजेपी इज़ अ पार्टी विद अ डिफरेंस।
But you have all these opposition parties who are ganging up and they insist that this entire exercise of the election commission, they're looking at the election commission as an extension of the Bharatiya Janata Party, and they're saying it's happening at the behest of the BJP. Why is it happening just now, just before election?
They are saying it is happening at the behest of the BJP because when they were in the ruling dispensation, they were doing it at the behest of Congress or the behest of the ruling party. So they think the BJP also would follow the same pattern as they were doing. And that's why he said BJP is a party with difference. They don't understand the working of. We follow the norms of democracy within the party, outside the party, in equal measure. And if it is happening incidentally at a time when the elections are close, I don't think you need to attach motives to that. That means it's a very subjective observation, or maybe it suits your imminent prospects of defeat. You're preparing a ground or an explanation for that.
So when we talk about, the use of science, the use of technology, can this also be used to prevent the threats that our country faces at various borders? We spoke of Operation Sindoor, but then there's a threat that we face on the Bangladesh border. There's a threat that our country faced at the Myanmar border in Manipur. There's a threat that we face all along the India-Tibet border. Where does science and technology help India? In 2020, we were told that we were surprised when the Chinese came to Tibet so quickly at our borders, at the India-Tibet border. How do you view that?
No, I think we are now much ahead of that. We have very precise surveillance systems in place all along the border, along the international border. Incidentally, my constituency has a sizable span of IB, international border. And it's to be seen, to be watched how they are being deployed over there. So these are electronic surveillance monitoring systems, both by thermal detections. Otherwise, you can even visualize, and even the tunnel detection technologies are being applied, both heliborne and others. So I think we are now much ahead in that, and that's why we've been able to cut down on infiltration in a considerable measure compared to what it was. अभी जो थोड़ा बहुत हो रहा है तो थोड़ा रिवराइन और उससे हो रहा है, but that also is being attended to.
And on other borders like Myanmar, on India-Tibet?
There were sometimes, some controversies or contradictions about the exact border. That's also being, in that also the space department has been made a partner to actually work out that. And our center,
on the Myanmar border.
Yes, our center at Shillong is also working on that, also to precisely define and demarcate.
That works even along the Bangladesh border?
All the borders, wherever it is required. Okay. And the Home Ministry is also working closely. In fact, the Northeastern Council, which when I was the donor minister, that happened. The Northeastern Council, which was earlier affiliated only to the donor ministry, has now also been made subservient to the Home Ministry, the Ministry of Home Affairs, for this precise reason as well.
Sir, we've had a brilliant conversation, and there's so much else that I want to talk to you about. Perhaps we will do that at a later date.
Thank you
for joining me here
on
the Chakraview podcast. Many thanks.
Thank you, I enjoyed.